Shalom and welcome to Nazaree Israel. I'm Norman Willis, and welcome to Joseph's parasha for the Genesis 35 Alliance, which consists of the core of the kingship nation of Judah and the house of Judah, and is surrounded in today's politics in the political landscape by a company of Josephite Christian nations. And as an administrative announcement, before we begin, we need to respond to some very disrespectful comments on the last videos. Uh, some of them went past moderation, some did not. And just for general information, just so people know, we're a very small, very, very hardworking team, and we are chipping away at a mountain of work that needs done. Speaking here to the house of Ephraim, we're trying to set the example in the hopes that others in the house of Ephraim will also realize that we all have the requirement to help Yeshua's kingdom grow. It's not just for other people. Okay. The reality is there's not much support. And if that's not clear enough, what we have is we have a few people supporting the work and helping so make these broadcasts possible. And it seems that Ephraim has a great many times more people who expect that we here on this end have nothing better to do than to spend our lives waiting for their comments, waiting for their emails, so that we can respond to them hand and foot. Basically, sort of to spoon feed them, so to speak, like to give them their bottle, so to speak, or maybe a different kind of a bottle. Now, that's the sad to say, okay, speak the truth in love. Well, according from our perspective and according to our studies, that basically pertains to the vast majority that we have in the house of Ephraim today, at least judging by their fruits. We have essentially babies in diapers who expect a full-time wet nurse or nanny care. And they don't have any intention. They have no idea. They've never spent any time thinking about how to help Yeshua get what he wants, which is what his father sent him to train up a crew to build. No one thinks about that. No one spent so much as 7 minutes just sitting down and thinking, now, if I was Yahweh, what would I want? I recommend the exercise. But what it seems like is we have a lot of people hassling my assistant and the contact personnel for personalized spoon feeding. By that, we mean personalized support and service. Some of the emails we have people, brothers, so to speak, in Ephraim. Just administrative announcement. They're angry because we don't open the Sabbath discipleship meetings to them right now. And they want to know why, because they want to come in. They want us to change the rules for them. They want us to change the standards for them. And if we'll change the standards for them, then maybe they'll consider donating. And it's like, okay, take that right back to Asaph's house where it came from. Okay, we don't do that here. We are not a messianic ministry. We're not prostitutes here. Okay, Yahweh has his standards. We are his servants. Of difficult realities, just to speak the truth in love, just to help people understand where we are. So basically, I am wearing more than one hat right now, so to speak. The parasha, the parashiot, is an eldership role. It's not an apostleship role. But very sadly, we do not have Yahweh has not provided a qualified elder at this time. We keep everything in prayer. But we don't have enough support to keep even this level of things going. As I said in previous parashiot, I have to slash the production time on the parashiot to make time for the documentaries, which is what the priorities are. So now we have other guys, we have other brothers who are demanding that we provide them with free services. And then they might, it's like, get out of here with it. And sad to say, it's like the vast majority of the people don't seem to come with a heart of what does Yeshua want and what can I bring to the fight? How can I bring my A game for real? I have all kind of tricks, all kind of games. I've seen people, they're trying to make money off the kingdom rather than dedicating themselves to helping to build the kingdom. It's like if what's in it for us, kind of, you know what I mean? It's like, and Yeshua is not enough for us. Helping Yeshua get the kingdom he died for to help set us free, that's not enough for us. It's like, I don't know what to say, brothers. At this point, with the visions, with the mission that Elohim has given me, I have to manage my time very strictly. So I'm very sorry if that hurts anyone's feelings, but that it's not my intention by any means. But according to my understandings, what I've received through vision and through prayer, I need to make much more time for the documentaries. And since there's not enough support, and since we don't have a qualified elder at this point in time in the English branch, we do in the Spanish branch and also Portuguese, but not English. That can only mean that I need to take time away from the parashiot to make more time for the Beit Mikra documentaries. So just the reality of my life. I'm just speaking the truth in love. Okay, I don't know where entitled Ephraim. I've met, I don't know how many thousands of Ephraimites I've met through the years. I don't know where the entitled house of Ephraim gets the idea that we owe them all of our time here at Nazarene Israel. And we have armies of people, we have thousands of people supporting the operation, thousands of workers just waiting to pounce upon their every whim. And it's just like, Romans chapter 12, verse 3, I believe. It's, brothers, we need to not make more out of ourselves than what we are. Okay, so we have a very small, very dedicated core team. We wish there were more people with this level of dedication. 85, 90, sometimes 100 hours a week, every week. Without enough support and services, and so people who just want to take our time, and they basically want to come us. They want to come for us to spoon feed them. That's basically what they want. They want, or bottle feeding according to their whim, and then take care of the rest, right? So, I know what people want because I was raised in that church system too. I was raised in that mystery Babylonian, Greco-Roman church system as well, where you adore Yeshua, but you never learn to become like Yeshua. And that's good enough, right? Just bring your tithes, just bring your money, bring your donations or whatever you do. And then the Messianic realm, well, you don't even have to do that. Just get together at your friend's house and watch some videos, or do a Bible study together. That's the fullness of the Great Commission. Okay, brothers, sisters, I love you too much to lie to you like the Messianic book salesman and like the Messianic pink horse, red horse disorganization preachers do. We'll explain all that in the series on the four horses. But I mean, of course, everybody likes to watch a critical video when someone else is the target, right? Or when someone else has to improve. Oh, we like to watch that. Ho, 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 ho. We feel really good. Oh, but wow, Ephraim doesn't really like it when someone points out that basically the house of Ephraim feels entitled and basically feels entitled to everything for free the way he wants. Oh, but he's not overly privileged. There's not many people globally who, I don't know, who want to do what the renewed covenant actually says. There's this excuse, there's that excuse. Oh, we need to come to the wedding banquet. No, we have something else going on. Quite frankly, so when I was called to this movement in 1999 in a miracle, I looked everywhere for some ministry that was doing what the renewed covenant really truly said to do, could answer every question according to a good, clean understanding. And couldn't find one. So, and then, I was just talking on a forum, corresponding on a forum. People started writing me, asking me questions. Okay, well, we are doing the hard work of setting the tabernacle of David back up, according to what it says in Acts chapter 15, according to scripture. That's where our forerunners left off before the slide into the great falling away, the mistaken slides of the church fathers, and then Asaph leading to Asaph's house in Rome. Because why? Because we want to do our own thing instead of submitting to Elohim's thing as recorded in the pages of scripture. And we're not willing to be disciplined. We're not willing to put him first. So we barely have time for personal care here. We just a lot of hours, a lot of work. We're trying to keep this thing moving forward. Sorry Okay, just to make this clear, okay, if it wasn't clear already, there's some people you just got to put it right in their face. Say, and I'm sorry about it. This is not something I want to have to say, but we have more than enough people who want to take all of our time, spoon feeding them according to their personal wants, desires, and needs, etc. Okay, one of the hardest things in ministry is the ministry is not to the needy. The ministry is to the hungry. The ministry is the ones like they want to rent their ore, right? This what all of us who are here, we're all bringing all we have to the fight, so to speak, because we're under attack. So we're bringing all we have, and this is it. This is us. And then there's all these, bah, bah. Sorry, the answer has to be no. We just have to speak parables at you at the level of the 4,000, the 5,000, because for here, it's like Mark 6 and verse 31, where we just have like so many people, there's so much to do, there's so much going on. And I've met ministers, they're like not doing much, but I guarantee you, we don't always have time to eat, just because we're trying to do so many things. So, I don't know how to say this. It's like we read the record of how things were back in ancient times and the diligence with which people carried out the written word. You mention it to them once, that's it, or maybe twice, 3 times. Whoa, and here we have the internet age where people have access to everything in the world, and now the focus is on gathering information because it's the information age. It's like, when do we get to the discipleship age? When do we get Joseph to understand what Yeshayahu or Isaiah chapter 10 and verse 22 really means, and what it will mean very soon in all of our lives? And this is not a joke. This is live. This is very real, and there's urgent work to do. And if you're serious about helping, then come, let's work together according to a clean doctrinal understanding. Please read the website first. We ask disciples to read all the studies twice. But if you're not serious like that, please, please just don't waste our time with disrespectful comments. Okay, the comments are open to those who are trying to be respectful and constructive. The comments are open for those who want to recognize what both houses need to start doing in order to make a reality the Genesis 35 and verse 11 lines. It's right there in scripture. What are you going to do with it? Forget it? Ignore it? Oh, that was last week. We're not interested in that anymore. Brothers, both houses need to acknowledge this relationship. Many Ephraimites might already be aware of the relationship, but it seems like not many Ephraimites are necessarily they're not aware of their responsibilities vis-a-vis this relationship. And it seems like there's a lot of Ephraimites that just don't want to obey what is written in the renewed covenant. I don't know how to say this. Okay, if you don't want to obey the full renewed, if you don't obey all the Tanakh and all the renewed covenant, okay, then you're kind of on the wrong channel, so to speak. So, please just, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but please just go away, at least with comments wise. Don't go away mad. Okay, just go away until you want to hear what Elohim's word says rather than what men say. Okay, we're not interested in the church fathers and the direction they took things into Asaph's house in Rome. We don't do that. Okay, and we're not interested in the Talmud. It's a question. It's like, who do you worship? Are you going to worship Elohim and read and study and obey his word and make that your focus? Or are you going to study men's words? In which case you're going to have fragmentation, division, warfare, like we have today, or we've had in the past. But clearly Judah's cursing us, asking for our deaths 3 times each weekday. So, and you can't seem to get Ephraim's attention. They can't seem to put 2 and 2 together. Okay. Our job, okay, just in case I haven't made it clear, just in case it's not plain on the website, just in case people can't read their own scriptures and figure this out, okay, our job in Nazarene Israel is to find, locate, immerse, and then train and equip true committed disciples in all nations, committed, who will bring about the support. And this, as we see it, will bring about the support structure for the millennial reign government outside the land of Israel. It's way too much to get into right now. I can't possibly begin to unpack it until the end of the Four Horses series. So that's going to be many years from now. So people just need to hang on. You know, we're trying to explain all this stuff, but I'm sorry, we don't have personalized attention. We're not putting a price tag on it and selling it on Amazon.com or wherever. You know, we're open, offering it free so that you can all hear the word for free, Ephraim. And if you're responsible, if you're righteous, if you're truly someone who loves Yeshua and wants to do everything that he said to do, realizing that he's going to be your intercessor, that he's going to be the one that's going to stand before his father and say, no, 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 this one, because he did everything I said with as much zeal as he could. Oh, no, that one? Oh, no, he didn't do anything. He thought he was a hero, but he was a zero. And we're already told. There's a broad, easy road that leads to destruction. And that's what most people are looking for. Okay, we'll talk all about it in the Abraham Accords series. But for now, just basically, basically since the parasha series was unceremoniously dumped back in my lap, when I was already massively overcommitted and already massively overstretched for time, this is all the time that I have, and I need to be making more time for the documentary. So this is what that looks like. Okay. Now I've given my assistant now has very clear instructions that this parasha series is for those who want to do what they can to help build the Genesis 35 or realize the Genesis 35 and verse 11 alliance in any real form. Okay. And I'm sorry, writing is arguing with us. That's not helping us. Right. Okay. So I, so I'm so sorry. We don't have time for phone calls. We don't have time for chit chats. I can't message you on instant messenger. It doesn't mean that I don't care. It just means that you have to have an order as an organization, as a nation, for getting things done. That's what we talked about last week. We talked about organizing the armies of Elohim. Okay. So, so sorry, we don't have time to do. I think people send me like 600-page books and say, please get back to me on this. It's like, listen, I don't know how to say this but just to say it. It's like when you start to think about things in Yahweh and Yeshua's eyes and the way they look at things. Okay. If you're in a leadership role, you're going to be kind of, well, I don't know how else to say it. Basically, what we have in the house of Ephraim is 99+% of effectively little baby spiritual children who want some spiritual mommy and daddy to pick up the room for them and do all their chores for them so that they don't need to learn what it means biblically in the renewed covenant to grow up. And I know that doesn't sound nice, and I know people don't like that. And it does. This particular one doesn't just apply to Ephraim. I don't know how else to say it. The rabbis might prefer a child bride that's at least 3 years and 1 day old, I guess, like it says in Talmud Tractate Sanhedrin 69a. But if you're a renewed covenant believer, Yeshua is not coming for a child bride. Yeshua is coming for a mature adult bride who's without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. He's not coming for a lazy bride. Okay. So, the difference between children and adults, I mean, children, they have their needs, and that's just what they are. They're brand new. They're legitimately brand new. Like we're talking about like the first year of your faith. You could be called a babe. And that should be, you just absorb, and someone needs to take care of it for you, no problem. Okay, but beyond that, you need to start growing in the faith, just like children. They need to start learning to do something around the farm. They have chores, this kind of a thing. Oh, it's shocking in today's world. By the time you reach the adult level, you don't just let them grow up wild until they're 18 and then bang, all of a sudden they're adults. They need training. They need training in how to succeed. So because by the time you become an adult, and then you might take on a relationship with another, with you might get married, you might have children, you might need to take your place in the society and provide for others. You need to and as a man, you need to learn to take your place within the brotherhood. Okay, well, there's standards for taking your place within the brotherhood. The whole concept of brotherhood is like a lost concept in the house of Ephraim. And you try and talk with people about it, and they don't want to know why, because it's not easy and it's not free. But by the time you get to be an elder, now you need to be looking out for the best interests of everyone, but also in a spiritual analogy, you need to be getting your spiritual family, so to speak, ready to take their place in the brotherhood. It's a very active kind of a thing. It's not a passive thing at all. So, and in this context, we have to reject the what I call the Roman amphitheater model. Because what do you have in a Roman amphitheater? What do you have in a church? Okay, well, you're going to pay a price of admission at some point. You go in, and then you're going to pass the bat. So you go in, you have your presentation. You get, what do you get? You know what I mean? You're going to watch your entertainment. Maybe you have dinner and a show, right? And then you're going to leave. At some point, you're going to pay a bill, but there's no real involvement. You're not becoming part of the thing. That's the problem with Asav's model. It's great for maybe step one, bringing people in who have no knowledge of anything. We have brand new baby believers. It can work. You can have an evangelical format like that. That's another discussion, another time. It's for the Set Apart Community series. We just don't have room for the Roman amphitheater model here. You've seen the dog, you walk in, you pay the price at some point, you have your dog and pony show, and you go. Okay, and this is what the 4,000 and the 5,000 wanted. They weren't interested in taking part. They weren't interested in getting involved. They wanted to have their problems healed. They wanted to have their questions answered. Then they wanted to have dinner and a show. They wanted the fish and the bread, and then watch some miracles. Wow, that's amazing. Adore him, and then go without ever wanting to become like him. Okay, this is where we need to understand he is our one and only rabbi. And that's what you do in the rabbinical model. He's the only rabbi we will ever have, but that's what you do in the rabbinical model. There's no secret. I mean, he came at the end of the Second Temple period for a reason, is what I'm trying to say. There's a reason that's the snapshot. Okay, that was him. Daniel 9, 25, 26. Mashiach Nagid, he is our example. We need to be imitating him and not just talking about imitating him. And when you come into the Roman amphitheater and adore him, whether there's an idol hanging on the wall or not, whether there's a graven image hanging on the wall or not, when you only adore him, even without an idol, even without an image, but you don't learn to become like him, you have stepped into Mystery Babylon, brothers and sisters. You have adopted a model other than the one Yeshua participated in. And it just so happens that the model that Yeshua participated in requires participation. We talk about that in many other places. So if you're not willing to participate, if you're not willing to be someone to become a participant in good standing, you're not going to stand up in front of the congregation in the Second Temple period if you're not contributing to that community. We'll talk about that some other time. So our mission here, what we need to focus on, our mission here in this parasha series is in part to provide as best we can, we have a requirement to provide an Acts chapter 15. Acts chapter 15 requires us to provide a parasha for the people so that they can hear Moshe being preached. Okay, there's a lot of people preaching Moshe. We prefer that you read it for yourselves and not approach your rabbi or whoever to interpret it for you. We recommend that you read it eyes on the paver, not boots on the ground, eyes on the screen, on the paper, whatever you got, on the scroll. Okay, read his word for yourself. Obviously, we're coming up, whether you're on the Jewish side or the Ephraimite side, obviously we're coming up on war. Would it be nice to know what Elohim says about these things? Okay, well, what we're trying to do here, what Nazarene Israel hopes to accomplish in this is to find real elder candidates. We're broadcasting. English is the de facto lingua franca of the world at this point in time. My Hebrew is just not up to task at this point. I need more time to learn Hebrew. I don't have it. It's just there's so much to do. So, but what we're trying to do, we're trying to help both houses to understand the approach that they need to take and how they need to do things differently, not only so that Joseph can come home, but also so that the Genesis 35 alliance might be strengthened as the new NATO effectively during the Messianic age. Okay, and we talk about all kind of stuff in the Four Horses series, and then we have another series beyond that. I don't have a title for it yet. All of this important stuff that needs to happen, basically strategic, long range, national, international planning to do what? We're going to talk about in the Abraham Accord series how Elohim has a long range plan to restore the conditions of the Garden of Eden to the earth. It's a multi step plan. We'll have to unpack it somewhere else. But most of Ephraim, it's like, has he thought about what Elohim wants? Has he given so much as an hour thinking deeply about what would, if I were Elohim, what would I want? If I sent my son to die to redeem Ephraim, what would I want to see from Ephraim? But we don't see that. We don't, Ephraim doesn't do that. Like I can count, well, more than I don't know many. I know maybe a dozen people like that. And that is just a pity. It's sad. It's tragic. If you were Yahweh and you sent your son to die to redeem Ephraim, what kind of behavior would you want to see from Ephraim? Um, Judah has his own problems. Judah is like, well, Tanakh, Shemach, we don't care. We have Talmud. So forget what Elohim said. The word of the rabbis, that is what will stand. And if you don't be respectful to us, we're just going to delete you in the upcoming deletion culture. So and you don't want to give up the Tanakh. You don't want to give up Daniel 9 verses 25 and 26, which requires that the Messiah comes at the end of the Second Temple period. But Ephraim, how do you solve a problem like Ephraim? How do you get Ephraim to do what it says to do in the renewed covenant? It's like we get these comments. I'm a little upset with what some people, the way they're treating my assistant. It's like, you come online, what are you doing for the kingdom? And you feel like your job, like our job as Yeshua's servants, is to cater to whatever, however you want your ears tickled. So you look to your complete satisfaction. And if we're not willing, they haven't read the studies, they haven't. So, long story short, we are Elohim's servants, and we are here to satisfy Elohim. And if Elohim's people do not want to obey his word, then that's why we just need to help them understand Isaiah chapter 10 and verse 22. But what we have in Ephraim, talk about the drunkards of Ephraim. What we seem to have people, it's like they seem to believe that they are the Ruach HaKodesh, and they have the authority to tell us what we should be doing. We need to listen to them rather than to Elohim. And we do want to listen to respectful input. We realize that there are other people out there who are specialists in certain areas, people who are well read, well studied in their scriptures. And there are people who understand the concept of community. There are people who understand the biblical concept in the renewed covenant of having a single community worldwide. And it requires behaving respectfully. If you're not going to respect Elohim and his word by first obeying his rules, it's like, then what do you want from us to begin with? Okay. And I know a lot of people, they want a church, they want a messianic Sabbath church. Okay. And I tried that one time, actually. I went to Texas. I tried to start because they weren't ready for a synagogue. And I didn't understand that I was still studying the synagogue model myself. So I figured, well, we'll start there and then we'll progress from there. No, no, no. They didn't want that. They wanted a place to come and adore Yeshua, and they didn't want to become like Yeshua. It wasn't a burning desire in them to become like Yeshua, to live like Yeshua, to walk like Yeshua. What was Yeshua really trying to do? They don't know. Tried telling them, they don't know. I don't know how many Ephraimite congregations, how many Ephraimite leaders I've met like that. Okay. Just to be clear, okay, if you haven't picked up on it by now, if you haven't gotten my drift by now, we don't do Babylon here. Okay. Maybe that's what's confusing. Okay. Maybe you're looking for mystery Babylonian church confusion. Maybe you're looking for a pink horse model. It's like, well, we're not completely red. We're not completely like Esav. We're just pink. It's like, sorry, we don't do pink here. No, 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 no. White horse requires a conversion experience. If you don't know what I'm talking about, read the scriptures and obey them. I mean, I don't mean to be cheeky. It's just like, this is where we're at. We have a bunch of people who call themselves Ephraimites, and they want to adore Yeshua, but they don't want to learn to walk like him. And if you try and tell them, you'll take insults. Okay, so it's like, well, how do you consider the source? Okay, let's inspect the fruit. We're not here to judge, but we're told to inspect the fruit. So you claim him as your king, okay, but you're looking for excuses to disobey his words. Okay, so you're looking for reasons, you're looking for ways to disobey your king. And later in the Abraham Accord series, we'll also talk about it was Yeshua himself who is the one who gave the Torah at Mount Sinai. The manifestation. We'll talk about that. Future videos. Okay, but understand, people, you're going to have to understand in the first place, we do have a requirement, Acts chapter 15, to preach the Torah. But the best that we can do at this exact moment in time is that I can offer you effectively a hybrid Torah portion midrash. Okay? And one reason is I just have too many hats to wear. Okay, but here we are. This is life. Okay, we're here. So he gives us what we need to bloom and thrive in every situation in life. We just have to be open to it, open to change, open to, humbling ourselves, stepping up, fulfilling the need. So this is partially an apostolic level parasha midrash that is, we hope, will be used to educate and build up future volunteer servant leaders who want to do everything that Elohim says to do, both in the Tanakh and in the Brit Hadashah. Okay, to me, it's like, I don't understand why that's not just obvious to everyone, that we would have to do everything in the Tanakh and everything in the Brit Hadashah. Okay, help me with that, Ephraim. I don't get it. Like, why is that such a concept? Why is there like maybe a dozen people who get that and that's it? Okay, so we're talking about the minimum requirements, what the renewed covenant says to do. Well, verses Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 11, where it says, and he himself gave da, 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 and then goes on through verse 16, and people are like, oh, well, that's optional. Great Commission's optional. Foundation of Apostles and Prophets is optional. But we're real disciples. Yeah, we're real disciples, aren't we? Okay, so no, what we are hoping to do, one of our goals in this, what we hope to get out of this, is we are hoping that Elohim we are broadcasting the need for real disciples who want to make a true life commitment to Elohim's standards and also make a commitment not to lower Elohim's standards for personal gain or for any other reason, for taking it easy or relaxing his standards or for any other reason. Okay. However, at the same time, we do have a need for evangelical tools to reach the people. It's an eldership. The parasha is an eldership job, as we understand it. There's no one else to do the job. We're required by Acts 15 to do it. We're trying to do it as best as we can. I've still got to drop my production time to make more time for the documentaries. When the documentaries are out, we pray that you will then understand. Okay, I can't make it any clearer than that. Okay, it's just sorry. Okay, be respectful, or we're just not going to publish it. Or we might, but you're not going to like it. So I remember that my dad, one time when I told him that I was called to this line of work, he says, well, Norman, he says, if you're being called to that line of work, he says, you will find that there's always a much greater demand for services than there ever is supply. And there was never a truer word that my earthly dad told me. So, I mean, bleating sheep, feed me, but they don't. It's like, get away from my wool. Don't touch my milk. Get away from, just leave me alone. Just feed me and that's it. Okay, where's the relationship? They don't care. They just want what they want. That's it. Okay, well, that's why they're in the barn. Sorry, we don't have time right now. Okay, we're running on the edge as hard as we can. We don't have the support. Okay, we can't. You can cry all you want. Okay, do not abuse my assistant, or we'll block you or delete you or whatever. Okay, that offsides. If you call yourself a believer in Yeshua, and you're going to treat another brother or sister that way, and you're not even providing chapter and verse, like like a reasonable argument would be, oh, could you please help me to understand this? And then we'll find the appropriate study for you. If there's a problem in the studies, let us know. We'll fix the study. But don't just hammer and argue and we don't have time. Okay, we don't have time for infants in the terrible twos. Okay, you've learned the word now, and then you're now, and for 2 years, now. Okay, we can't use that. Okay, Yeshua is looking for adult disciples who know what it means to take responsibility for themselves so that they can then enter into true relationship with him, which has the need to obey his rules. And there's no options on this. That's what it means he's a king, right? That's it. Zeu, as they say. Okay, we need people who are serious. And if you're not serious about serving your king, if you're not serious about obeying all of his word, if you're not coming like, how should we do it? How can we keep his whole word? Okay, I mean, how do we expect to survive? I mean, if that's our approach. Okay, if you were Yahweh, you sent your son to die a horrible death to bring Ephraim back to the Torah. Okay, well, not a Levitical order, we're a Melchizedekian order because different job, so different rules, different operating instructions. They're right there in the new covenant. Oh, no one wants to enter in. Oh, but they're disciples. Whew. Don't know what to tell you, brothers. Okay, if you think you're smarter than Elohim, okay, if you think you don't need to obey Yeshua, then I don't know what to tell you. Okay, a word to the wise should be sufficient. Okay, if you're rude to my assistant, my instructions are block or ban, or we'll try to help, but please be respectful. I mean, you can understand it coming from Brother Judah because they curse us and ask Elohim for our deaths 3 times a day in the Birchat Haminim. But to get it from Ephraim? Okay, so with that in mind, we have a second administrative announcement. We also try to give people a global perspective because this is something we hope to cover in the Abraham Accords video series. We don't have time to unpack it here, but this is perhaps Well, it's the thing everyone misses. It's one of the keys that unlocks what we're supposed to be doing for him as the Genesis 35 and verse 11 alliance. So, taking a global perspective, let's look at Bereshit or Genesis chapter 2 and verse 15, which tells us then Yahweh Elohim took Adam, took the man, and put him in the Garden of Eden to tend and to keep it. Now, that's our mission statement. That's part of our job right there. Why? Because that's what we were created to do, was to tend and to keep his garden. So we'll talk about, and that's what he's always wanted, is he's wanted a single family of man that listens to him and does what he says, stays in right relationship with him, but then they all also stay in right relationship with each other. It takes a heart of willingness to do that. And there's rules to doing that. And Elohim lays it out in the written Torah, in the Tanakh, and also in the Brit Hadashah. So the Torah portion, let's come to Shemot or Exodus chapter 18, starting in verse 11. So Yitro and Moshe are talking. So Moshe's father-in-law, Yitro, and he says, now I know that Yahweh is greater than all the other false gods. For in the very thing in which they behaved proudly against him, he was above them. So what does this say to us? This says Yahweh is in the business of smashing pride. Okay, well, what does this mean to us, brothers? Are we obeying his word, exactly what's written as he said it, or are we too proud for that? Let's come to, well, we take a look at Shemot or Exodus chapter 18. There's a passage here from verse 13 to verse 24, and we're going to focus in on that. And it says, and so it was on the next day that Moshe sat to judge the people, and the people stood before Moshe from morning until evening. We're going to see this turn up again in the renewed covenant portion. So when Moshe's father-in-law saw all that he did for the people, he said, what is this thing you're doing, Moshe? What are you doing? What are you doing for the people? Why do you alone sit and all the people stand before you from morning until evening? And Moshe said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of Elohim. Okay, so he's the judge. He's the prophet that also has temporal authority. He's the anointed judge. And when they have a difficulty, they come to me and I judge between one and another. And because I hear in the spirit, because I'm listening, I'm able to make known the statutes of Elohim and his laws. I'm able to interpret them for them, able to lay all that out because he listens to Elohim in the spirit. It's the key to the whole thing. So Moshe's father-in-law said to him, the thing that you're doing is not good. Both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out. It's too much. This thing is too much for you. You're not able to perform this all by yourself. And just to say, we can really relate to that here in Nazaree Israel. We are all busy trying to do the jobs of several people, but the job is here to do and it needs to be done. So we're running double and triple time to get the job done. Now, Yitro says, listen now to my voice, and I will give you counsel, and Elohim will be with you. Now stand before Elohim for the people, so that you may bring the difficulties to Elohim. And you shall teach them the statutes and the laws, which Yahweh will lay out later, and show them the way in which they must walk and the work they must do. So then we get all that in the balance of the written Torah. But the thing is, for Ephraim, then it becomes our job to do it. For Judah, it becomes our job to do that and not to replace what Elohim commanded with the Talmud or anything else. So Judah has a zeal to do his own thing, and Ephraim has a zeal to adore the correct thing, but he doesn't want to do it. Okay, well, part of the job here in the written Torah, once Moshe makes the things known to the people, then it's up to the people to do it. That's the difference. That's what people understood apparently back in the Midian, and that's what a lot of Ephraimites just don't seem to understand now. If you're going to be in relationship with Yahweh, it pays to be in right relationship with Yahweh. That means he speaks, we listen, we do. That's it. So now here we go. He says, moreover, you shall select from all the people able men. There's plenty of ability in Ephraim, plenty of ability. such as fear Elohim. Ouch, that's where Ephraim falls down. We'll talk about that. Men of truth. Ouch, that's again where Ephraim falls down. We'll talk about that. Men who hate covetousness. Ouch. Dumb, greedy dogs who don't know how to bark. And place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. Now, notice the military structure. As we saw last week, he brings us out of Egypt by our armies. Okay, notice the military structure. We'll see it again in the renewed covenant portion. And let them judge or lead or direct the people at all times. Okay, then it will be that every great matter they shall bring to you, but every small matter they themselves shall judge. Okay, delegate, train, supervise. So it will be easier for you, for they will bear the burden with you. Now, if you delegate, if you do this thing, delegate, train, supervise, review, and if Elohim so commands you, you need to listen in the spirit, you get a witness in the spirit, we need to be listening in the spirit, which is a forgotten concept among Ephraim. But then you will be able to endure, and all this people will also go to their place in peace. So Moshe heeded the voice of his father-in-law, Yitro, and did all that Yitro had said. Okay, Ephraim, I love you. Do you know how many times I've had people tell me, Norman, you need to appoint 10 men. And do you know how embarrassing it is to have to say that there are not 10 qualified men that I have found in the entire house of Ephraim? We have a few, we have a handful. Moreover, not in the English branch, moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, plenty of ability in Ephraim, such as fear Elohim. Wait, doesn't that mean you have to be doing what he says? Men of truth, men of the written Torah. Doesn't that mean you have to be doing what the written Torah says? Men who hate covetousness, mean they're willing to serve Elohim without putting the money first. That they're willing to do their part with maintaining brotherhood relationships and not just break off on their own and do their own thing or decide they don't want to respond to discipline. Okay. Doesn't this mean that they have to obey the whole Torah? Now, forgive me, brothers, tell the truth. Do we have 10 men in the entire house of Joseph who do their utmost to keep the whole Torah according to the spirit of Yeshua abiding in the vine? Do we have 10? Please introduce them to me. I would love to meet them. We should be working together to maintain a single, unified, and ordered body. And that's what Ephesians 2, verses 19 through 22, and Ephesians 4 command. We're talking about a single. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, a single, unified, and a single, well-ordered nation. We see this again. So in Luke chapter 9 and verse 14, Yeshua also tells his disciples to have the people do what? Have them sit down in groups of about 50. It's the same structure. It's the same structured military army concept. The difference is you have those that want to obey it and those who don't. You have a very handful few who want to obey it, and you have the vast majority who don't. Okay, so we're going to come back to this. We talk about this in more detail in the Set Apart Communities series, but we have the qualifications for elders in the Brit Hadashah, or the Renewed Covenant. So we come to 1 Timothy chapter 3, and we see an elder or a bishop. It's also called an overseer, or in Hebrew, zakan, a bearded one. So an elder, a bearded one, must be blameless. Okay. Now, doesn't that mean he has to keep the whole Torah of Moshe? Yes or no? I'm not saying he has to know all knowledge of prophecy. He has to know all the details, all the secrets, this and that. But doesn't he at least need to be trying? If he's going to be an example role, doesn't he at least need to be trying to keep the whole Torah? Yes? No? Okay, we'll cover the rest of the qualifications later, but what we're seeing in the Renewed Covenant, it's just the Renewed Covenant manifestations, a Melchizedekian manifestation of the same principles we read about in the Torah portion. Okay. So, brothers, the requirement to obey the whole Torah didn't go away. Okay. As in, what are you thinking, Ephraim? Okay. That's an Asavite doctrine. All righty. You can't just blow off any parts. Oh, what are we going to do here? We don't like this page. We're going to rip it out. Right. We don't like that. We're not going to do that part. Well, we read this part. Yeah, we kind of know it says that, but we don't want to do that. Right. Okay. Well, you might be a believer in Yeshua, but if you're not making your best, your level best effort to do everything in the word, you're not his disciple. Sorry to be the one to break it to you. And now, here we go. Titus chapter 1, verse 5. What happened? So to set in order the things that were lacking, Shaliach Shaul, or the Apostle Paul, what did he do? He left the Apostle Titus in Crete. That's what he did. Why? Okay, so that he could appoint elders in every city. Now we know Titus was also an apostle. Okay, so one of the indications, we talk about this in other places, there were more than just 12 apostles ever. In fact, we have at least 20, I'd have to count again, but like 22 or something named apostles in the renewed covenant. And it tells us clearly in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 13 that this fivefold manner of organization that's what we're supposed to use until we all come to the unity of the faith. Yes? Excuse me. Have we reached the unity of the faith yet? I don't think so. Okay, now take a look right here. Just all this in Titus 1:5. If we actually read our Bibles, we actually read the word and think and pray about what it requires, what it says, what we should be doing. Okay, now remember, Shaliach Shaul reported to the Nazarene Council or the Nazarene Beit Din Gadol, or you could say Nazarene Sanhedrin, but we prefer the Hebrew term, the Nazarene Beit Din Gadol in Jerusalem. Okay, the so-called Jerusalem Council, that was the Beit Din Gadol. That was the big council meeting for the Nazarenes. That's what it was. Okay, same structure. Okay, so because that's Judaism. So Acts chapter 15, Acts chapter 21, it's a court. So here we have Titus, who reported to Shaul. Okay, and now the elders report to Titus. Okay, and this is what the structure of the tabernacle of David looks like. Hello, this is what it looks like. So we're going to see a Levitical priestly structure as we walk through the parashiot. We're also going to see a Melchizedekian priestly structure for Yeshua's order of Melchizedek. And we'll talk about the requirements of that later if you want to read ahead. Torah government, also Acts chapter 15 order. Those are good studies. All that information is good. We'll try and turn those into video studies, but it'll take years. But notice here, okay, in Titus 1 and verse 7, okay, once again, okay, a bishop or an elder must be blameless as a steward of Elohim. And now, sorry, brothers, I so hate to be the one to have to say this, but can you show me 10 men? Can you show me anyone who's qualified to serve as a steward of Elohim when he does not obey everything Elohim said to do? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm autistic. I know communication's not our specialty. I'm looking for words. I'm looking for honoring words that say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, is to think you can be a steward for Elohim, for the king above all kings who knows everything. Okay. And he's not already going to be disposed to do his utmost for his master. It's like we've forgotten the concept of having a master. Under democracy, we're all our own masters. And we cede a little portion of our sovereignty to the government, limited government, right? Okay. What are we doing spiritually? Where's our government spiritually? Oh, well, I have a direct connection to the head. Not if you're not obeying his word, you don't. You might have a direct connection, but it's not what you think it is, not if you're not obeying his word. Okay, so, yeah, I don't know how I pray for good words. I pray for his words. Um, what it looks like to me is that we in Ephraim have taken the license to come into compliance as we can, as a license never ever to comply with Elohim's full Torah ever. Okay, this is what we talk about in the Nazarene Israel study. The church is a transitional vehicle. Okay, it's okay in the church if you take an interest, you poke your head in. Okay, that's different than discipleship. Discipleship is I'm in, sign me up. I know the job's dangerous. I know it's a lot of work. Sign me up. I want to make a commitment. Okay, now the most important thing, okay, is just if you're brand new to this and you need something to focus on, you need a takeaway, Shemot or Exodus chapter 19, verses 5 through 8, starting in verse 5. Now, this is a conditional promise. Notice all that's going on here. Yahweh says, now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice, okay, it means be listening for his voice, and keep my written covenant. Okay, two things. We have to be listening actively for his voice and doing everything he says, and keeping his written covenant, which we're talking about the written Torah of Moshe, or what later became the written Torah, or what later became the Tanakh, the older testament that's still in force. Yahweh didn't send his son to rebuke himself. That's crazy. So if you will obey my voice, not the rabbi's voice, not the church's voice, not the founding fathers, not the church fathers, none of that. Yeah, if you obey Elohim's voice and keep his written covenant, it's the Tanakh, then we shall be a special treasure to him above all people. The whole earth belongs to him anyway. And we shall be to him a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, a set apart nation. So priests, what makes us special? What makes us different? We've been called. Oh, many are called. How many are chosen? Okay, notice the great big if in this passage here. Notice the great big if. Okay, so Moshe came and he called for the elders of the people, and he laid before all the elders of the people, he laid all these words which Yahweh had commanded him. Right? And then the people answered together and said, here's your representative government, all that Yahweh has spoken, we will do. Okay? And our forefathers committed us by tribes, by houses, everything. Praise Yah. So Moshe brought back the words of the people to Yahweh. There's your commitment. We signed on. Our forefathers signed us on. Praise Yah. Especially if you're an Ephraimite, praise Yah that he's faithful to his side of the word. He's called us back out of the nations, out of every tribe, every tongue, every nation, every skin color, whatever, doesn't matter. Okay. But if you if you don't get anything, if you don't get anything else, get this. Okay. This is a conditional promise. Our forefathers obligated us both to hear and obey his voice. The skill, got to develop it, got to pray for the gift, got to develop it, and keep his written covenant, okay, the Tanakh, and not to ignore or replace his written covenant, and be happy about it. Be happy about it. Okay, we don't get to practice Ephraimite Torah light. Okay, we don't get to practice Sabbath Ephraimism. Okay, please, it's embarrassing. I I heard this last week. I heard of people, they're waiting for a special invitation from Elohim to obey what's right there on the page. Okay, they're Hebrew roots believers. Okay, they're reading the book, they say, with a Hebrew roots understanding. It's right there clear what they're supposed to do, and they're praying for a sign. Okay. If you can't hear his voice yet, that's one of the reasons why we have the written word in the first place. Okay. If you can't hear his word, you can't hear his voice because he hasn't gifted you with that because you're not obeying what you already have. The concept of like finish what's on your plate first, then you'll get more. Be faithful with one mina, then you'll get more. But be faithful. Become like Eliezer. Your job, your mission in life is to take care of the vital things for your master and king. And that's one of the things the written word is for, is to guide us, to make sure it's like a guardrail. You don't drive scraping the guardrail, but if you're bumping the guardrail, okay, try not to go over the guardrail. Okay. The written word is there to guide us into the correct interpretation. And if our interpretation doesn't align, doesn't match up with the written interpretation, with the written record, okay, something is wrong with our listening. Something is wrong with our interpretation. Okay. Another principle in the sect of the Nazarenes, okay, we don't need Talmud. We for sure don't need papal Talmud. Okay. And we also for sure don't need Ephraimite Torah light. Okay. We just need to read Elohim's words and learn to agree with him. Amos 3 and verse 3. Okay. Can two walk together unless they be agreed? If we don't agree with him, what are we going to do come the judgment? Brothers, brothers, brothers. If we don't comply with the word now, it's death penalty. I mean, I hate to say it, right? So this is Ephraim's dilemma. Okay, so here we have Orthodox Judah, to whom the reign is, he's still got the scepter. He's always had the scepter. And here's Levi saying they should put us to death if we don't turn away from the Tanakh and submit to Talmud. Okay, and then we have Elohim, on the other hand, who tells us that if we do what the rabbis are saying, he will put us to death. Okay, so now we have to decide who we fear more, the rabbis or Elohim. And as we've seen in other studies, and as we'll see again in the video series for the prime minister, Levi and Judah hated Joseph long before Yeshua came. It goes all the way back to Parasha Vayeshev. Okay, so it's literally a question that each one of us is going to have to face in the years ahead. Now, what that means is start preparing your children. Brothers, what do we have to do that is more important than hearing Yahweh's voice and doing everything that he says, and including everything in his written Torah, in his written covenant, in the Tanakh, in the Brit Hadashah? Anything? Is there anything more important than that if we're really together with him? Okay. What will a man give in exchange for his soul? Or what will man try to bribe? Brothers, I don't know how to say this, and I look for nicer words to say this, but I don't know how else to say it. From our perspective, according to my studies, just the studies that we've done, prayer, listening, taking a look at the world, taking a look at the news. If you haven't checked out the Nazaree Israel's Revelation news page, recommend doing that. You have to log in just because of bots. We have to keep the bots out. But from what we can tell, right, we don't share any information. Not that I don't have it already, okay. But right now, what we see is we're looking at a very, very disastrously high death rate in Isaiah chapter 10 and verse 22. Okay, where it talks about what it talks about how the destruction decreed shall be overflowing with righteousness. And the problem is, so, who's helping with the true Great Commission? Who among the people who claims to love Yeshua are placing Yeshua's kingdom first? Do we understand there's a kingdom to build? Do we understand there's actual commandments, things that are protocols that Yeshua established? Okay. We are confident that Elohim will provide those who love him and Elohim will call them to his true work, and that there are people out there who have not bowed the knee to Baal nor kissed his face, who love him and want to serve him. So we apologize for any less than polished language now that I have, again, way too many things to do. But our job is to lower the death rate from what we see it as approximately 99+% as it is right now. And we're not the judges, but from what we see, we're looking for people who are obeying everything that they know. And we're seeing like a 99+% death rate here. And our job, as we understand it, is to lower that death rate to a simple, flat 90%. And we'll talk about that in the video series, the Abraham Accords, but more especially the four horses. And we believe that if we preach really hard, shout from the rooftops, shout from the wavelengths over the next 30, 40, 50 years, shouting from the social media channels, whatever we have, maybe we can build the survival ratio up to maybe 10%. Because what you're reading there in Isaiah 10 and verse 22, that is our future, brothers. So which side of the divide do we want to be on? And how much effort do we want to put into making sure that's not the fate for ourselves and our families? So we're hoping to reach the 10%. That's who we hope to reach. And if you're one of the 90%, if you're one of the 4,000, the 5,000, the myriads, the multitudes, the crowds, and the throngs, Yeshua didn't have time, and we don't have time either. Okay, so sorry about that. I know those are hurtful words for people. I know I don't want to trigger anyone, but if you have part of discipleship, part of discipleship is I must decrease in my own eyes, so therefore he might increase. Okay, I believe it's Romans 12 and verse 3, I believe, commands us not to think more highly of ourselves than we ought. But not to be drunken Ephraimites, not to be spiritually drunk, like it says in Isaiah 28 and verse 1. But to look at ourselves soberly. We have to develop a personal one-on-one listening, obedience relationship with Yeshua and his spirit. It's not something that happens by accident. It's not something that happens without effort. You have to learn to make a constant effort. You're not going to keep Torah on accident. Okay? And here's the thing Ephraim doesn't get. Judah gets it. Here's the thing Ephraim doesn't get. Okay? After we take care of ourselves personally, after we bring ourselves in our house up to standards personally, then we need to do it corporately. Okay? Because the Melchizedekian order, as we'll explain in the Four Horses series, is his chosen method of governance for the world outside the land. That's how it's going to be during the millennium. We'll unpack all that in the Four Horses series. So, if you want to escape the destruction that's coming, brothers, read the Revelation and the End Time Study, or watch Revelation Simplified on YouTube. If you're like me, I prefer to study. The video has more information, and we'll make more videos too. But brothers, I don't care how much you think you know. Okay, I don't care how much you study. Okay, you have 4 or 5 PhDs. I don't care. Okay, unless you indicate submission to the King. Have we forgotten that we've fallen already? We've fallen from who and where we're supposed to be. That we have to elevate ourselves to get ourselves back up to where it is that we're supposed to be. And that if we're not even willing to obey the minimum standards that he gives in his word, and then we have people in the comments crying, why don't you give us a church service? Why don't you give us a mystery Babylonian formulation? Why don't you give us something where we can waltz in, la-di-da, like hummingbirds coming to and fro off of a flower pod? Okay, we're just gonna be loose sheep out there in the world beyond the fence, like no guarding, no shepherding. You're gonna get eaten. Okay, the fence exists for a reason. The Torah exists for a reason. We want to be in relationship with Elohim. And we're not going to follow his Torah. It seems to be what the vast bulk, the vast majority of Ephraim want. I mean, read the Set Apart Community series, this Acts 15 order, a Torah government study. That's where I would start, but that's the top down. And then Acts 15 order, that's how you walk it out. Watch the Set Apart Community series. We're trying to make it simple for people to understand, but there has to be some desire to enter into right relationship with him. Brothers, sisters, where is the willingness to enter into right relationship with him? Do we understand that not everything that's good in life is easy or free? And that some things, like especially keeping Torah, are specifically not easy or free for a reason, and that there's no way to get around that requirement, because that's why the requirement is there, is to see if we're willing to give up our free time and our money. But we're servants, we're dead to the flesh, right? Okay. So we talk about in the Set Apart Communities series, we talk about 1 Timothy 3, the requirements for eldership, the requirements for organization, and in Titus 1 and verse 5. We also talk about it in the Torah portion this week, and we're going to talk about it in many other places. Our prayer is to find what we're trying to do here. We're trying to find real disciples who have a real love for Yeshua and show proof by a real commitment, who understand that he says, if we love him, then we need to start doing everything he says to do. Okay, we can start by doing everything that is written in the Tanakh, the Older Testament, and the Brit Hadashah, or the Renewed Covenant. Okay, we can at least, we can't do everything right now. You might have a driver's license, but you can't drive a car if you don't have one. Okay, we don't have a temple right now. Okay, there's not a cleansed temple. The next temple will not be cleansed. Okay, we're talking about the temple after that one. Okay, we can't do the temple services until then. But there's a lot of other things we can do to help build Yeshua's kingdom. Okay, and Ephraim, the requirement is not just to read the scriptures from cover to cover. Okay, the requirement is to do everything written in Elohim's word. Okay, and not just the good ethical parts that we're all such good and nice people. Okay, but there's actually statutes, ordinances, precepts. There's protocols established by Yeshua. Okay, Mashiach Nagid. We're going to claim Judah's like waiting for Mashiach Nagid. Okay, joke's on him. Daniel 9 verses 25 and 26. Okay, Mashiach Nagid had to come near the end of the Second Temple period. But here you have Ephraim. We know who Mashiach Nagid is, right? Because we read that. We read it, right? We have a core of opinion that we get to do whatever we want to do, because now we have Bibles. Now we're going to read them. So organization is out. Forming a single body is out. So we don't really care about building a single kingdom for Yeshua. We don't, what's that to us? And what is the Great Commission of Matthew chapter 28, verses 19 through 21, where our job is to make real disciples in every nation who lower themselves in their own eyes. They get off the spiritual bottle, okay, and they decide to they want nothing more than to do everything that's written in his word, because they know he's their husband. They want to please him. And they know it's not easy or free. And we're looking for those people that want to behave as his body, okay, and that we unify his body on a single foundation of apostles and prophets, or apostles and elders. Okay, like it says in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 19 through 22. And one of the things we do is we implement the fivefold ministry protocol that Yeshua himself, that Mashiach Nagid, that Mashiach the teller, Mashiach the director, Mashiach the prince, gave us to order and organize ourselves by, is recorded in Ephesians chapter 4, starting in verse 11 and going through verse 16. But it says very clearly right there in verse 11, and he himself. And verse 13 very clearly says, this is what we're supposed to do. I mean, the whole thing, the whole passage, this is how we are supposed to order and organize ourselves until we come to be perfect men. Oh, and it requires giving. Oh no, we don't like that part. We just want to come flit on and off. We just want to go back and forth with no commitment. It's like modern marriage. We want modern marriage to Elohim, no commitment. We want to test it out, get all the good stuff, and then go away. We don't want to help him. Like, you're not going to get to help him if you don't want to help him. Come on, guys. Come on, brothers. I pray for my brothers and sisters in Ephraim that they will be serious, that they will get serious, that they will wake up, that you can't please Yeshua by ignoring his words. He says, if you love me, keep my commandments, not ignore my commandments. It doesn't say to ignore the sacrifice. It doesn't say to ignore the blood. It doesn't say to take it for granted. You know, you can't be independent. Okay. I mean, I've met ministers, they boast of having no affiliation. It's a big thing in the Messianic movement. Okay, because it's not a real body, it's a ghosting body. Okay, you say one word of corporate discipline. Excuse me, Torah says this, Matthew 18 process, please. Poof, they're gone. They've ghosted you. You know, and the problem is, brothers, what we need is a real body, because it requires a real body, because the real body of Ephraim is the stick of Ephraim in Ezekiel chapter 37 and verse 16. Okay, we have to form it first. Okay, and people are looking, they got the leaven of Herod. People are looking for a political solution. And the problem is, leaven of Herod, okay, if it's not easy and it's not free, then under a democratic system, we don't want that. We want the political officers to give us something that's relatively painless for us, that doesn't require us to commit ourselves, that doesn't truly require love of Yeshua or love of Elohim or love of his words in the Tanakh. Because you didn't have discipline, you didn't have to set yourself apart from things that are not of Elohim. If you didn't have to set yourself apart from the works of the church fathers, if you didn't have to set yourselves apart from the Talmud and from the rest of the secular world at large, okay, if we're not going to set ourselves apart by Elohim's words, then how are we setting ourselves apart unto Elohim? Okay, and then you have the masses of Ephraim in Isaiah 10 and verse 22 and many other verses. They just don't really care. Because why? Because Isaiah chapter 28 and verse 1, they're too busy getting drunk and playing tennis. You know, I mean, Yeshua died so we can sit around and read about what we're supposed to be doing, but no one wants to do it. And no one in Ephraim really cares because no one wants to do it. And that's the extent of our love and commitment for Yeshua. Are we back to the lost tennis tribes where love means nothing? And we think that he's going to intercede for us when he sees written in the book, they didn't do anything for me. They mouthed it. They had lunch at their friend's house. They're not going to organize and do my program that my father sent me to enact. So Yohanan or John 14 and verse 15, Yeshua says, if you love me, conditional, then keep, obey, guard my commandments, It takes more than just reading them on the page. You can't just memorize them and not do them. It doesn't work like that. Ephraim, wake up, buddy. Wake up, brother. Judah, you don't get to replace them with your own words. Okay, now we have the 10 words, the 10 commandments, the 10 things. Now they deserve their own special treatment, much more than we can give them here. So we're going to jump to our Haftarah prophetic portion. And this week it is Yeshayahu, or Isaiah chapter 6 chapter 6 through chapter 9. And there's too many things to say here. We're going to make a stop in Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 9. And so Elohim, Yahweh, says to tell the people to keep on hearing, but don't get it. Keep on seeing, but don't see, don't perceive. Verse 10, make the heart of both houses dull. This is prophesied. Do the math. Make the heart of both houses dull and their eyes heavy, and shut their eyes, each house in their own separate ways. And do this because why? Because they don't really care. So because they don't really care, do this so that they will think that they are seeing the Torah with their unloving eyes, their stingy, evil eyes. And so they will think that they're hearing the Torah with their non-caring ears, their undedicated, unclean ears. Okay, and that's what they're going to think in their hearts, because both houses, Judah and Joseph, they think they're already knocking it out. They think they've already got it. Judah is so sure that the Talmud is the way to go. Ephraim is so sure that laziness is going to see him through. Okay, what's wrong? What's wrong is neither Judah nor Joseph, neither Judah nor Ephraim are really taking care to double, triple, quadruple check that what they're doing and obeying is the truth, the things that Elohim said to do. So because they don't care really in their hearts about what Elohim said to do, they're not going to return and they're not going to be healed. And guess why? Is because basically this is Elohim's version of a bozo filter. Oh, and this has never happened before, but it doesn't mean it's not going to happen now. Just because the prophecies didn't come to fulfillment before, does that mean the prophecies aren't going to come to fulfillment now in these end times? Judah, what are you thinking? Burn your Talmud, bury your Talmud, get rid of your Talmud, incinerate it. Go back to the Tanakh, go back to Elohim's word. Give your loyalty and your love back to Elohim, who chose you to start with. Ephraim, what are we doing? Are we looking to educate ourselves and grow great in our own eyes? Are we looking to humble ourselves and serve him? You know, our election is not guaranteed, brothers. Our election is not a done deal. Yeshayahu, chapter 8, starting in verse 11, verses 11 through 15. Verse 11, for Yahweh spoke to me thus with a strong hand and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of the majority, brother Judah. Following the majority equals bad. Ephraim, just because the majority is lazy, doesn't mean it's going to be okay. We're trying to get the death rate down from 99+% to 90%. Verse 12, do not say a conspiracy concerning all that this people call a conspiracy. Where's Ephraim at? He's all caught up in the political realm. He's worried about Trump. He's worried about Biden. He's worried about the presidency. He's worried about stolen elections. Okay, if we were obeying Elohim, you suppose we'd have any one of those problems? Nor be afraid of their threats, nor be troubled. Verse 13, Yahweh of hosts, him shall you hallow. Let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. Okay. How many messianics do I know who get all excited about the president, about the election, the controlled Babylonian democratic elections? You know, if they would just pay attention to Elohim's words, if they would do what Yeshua said to do, they would commit themselves to Yeshua's program, it'd be a whole different picture. Okay, but verse 14, Yeshua, he, Mashiach Nagid, Daniel 9, he will be as a sanctuary, but also as a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel, Judah and Joseph, and as a trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Verse 15, and many among them of both houses shall stumble, and they shall fall and be broken, be snared and taken. We show in the study on Revelation in the end times. We show in Revelation Simplified on YouTube, as we plan to show in the coming Four Horses series. This pertains to both houses. It doesn't matter whether you're Judah or Joseph. Okay, it doesn't matter which side of the Genesis 35 alliance you are presently on. It doesn't matter which one of those two teams that we're supposed to be working together, need to be working together. But it doesn't matter whether you're in Judah or in Joseph if you're not doing what Elohim said to do for whatever reason, because your rabbi said it was okay, because your pastor said it was okay, because you think it's okay. It's time to do some hard math. Okay, next stop, Yeshayahu or Isaiah chapter 8 and verse 20. To the Mishnah and to the Gemara, if they do not speak according to this, okay. 8 and verse 20, okay. To the written Torah and to the testimony. Yes, the testimony of the Spirit. If they do not speak according to Elohim's words, it's because there is no light in them. Okay? It's like, what are you thinking? Judah, what are you thinking with the Talmud? Oh, but Ephraim, okay, is it just reading according to the word? Is it just speaking according to the word? Or don't we need to actually do what's written in the word? Or else there's no light in us either. Yes, brothers? Yeshayahu 9, starting in verse 6, there's way too much to say here. For our purposes here, for unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder. And his name will be called Wonderful, where we've seen that, Counselor, Mighty Elohim. Now you can get around that because sometimes human rulers, the great ones, are called Elohim. That does happen. Oh, Everlasting Father? No, I don't think that's not a human title there. Prince of Peace. We'll talk about that in other places. Everlasting Father is just not a name for a simple mortal human being. That's just, that interpretation can't be right. Verse 7, and of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end. Ephraim, are you listening? Upon the throne of David, that's our job, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice, that's our job. From that time forward, even forever, that's our job. We're supposed to be busy organizing so we can do that. It says the zeal of Yahweh of hosts will perform this. Are we performing it? Do we have any zeal for Yahweh? Okay, if we have zeal for Yahweh of hosts, we will be busy performing this. Welcome to join us. Keep praying for Ephraimites that want to dedicate themselves to their love, to Yeshua. Orthodox Judah understands the need to work together, to work hard in an organized fashion to establish a kingdom for their king. Okay? If they would just read Daniel 9, verse 25 and 26, then they would know who it is. Okay, now Ephraim, on the other hand, he reads and learns all about what he's supposed to be doing. He knows all kinds of knowledge. He's read the prophecies how many times? Okay, but so why is it he doesn't feel he needs to be doing the minimums? Why is it with Ephraim? It's like one big joke. Oh, and Ephraim's not going to get killed for disobedience to his king. He's not going to get killed for rebellion because he was lazy, because he buried his mina. Well, here we have people, they're more worried about conspiracy theories in Ephraim than they are worried about obeying their Elohim, who only controls the world and everything that ever happens, right? Okay, that's how backwards most of Ephraim is. He's worried about the geopolitical sphere instead of making things right in the spiritual sphere so that Elohim would set things right in the material sphere around them. Absolutely cart before the horse material. Okay, here's another passage for both houses. We drop down to Yeshayahu 9, starting in verse 15 and verse 16. It says, the elder and honorable, he is the head. The prophet who teaches lies, something other than what Elohim says, he is the tail. For the leaders of this people cause them to err. Who could we be talking about here? And those who are led by them are destroyed. Who could we be talking about here? Don't we see this happening in both houses? Judah gives the nod to the Torah and then subverts it by means of Talmud. In contrast, Ephraim reads all the right books and he seems to be thinking he's doing all the right things, but he just doesn't seem to do the right thing because he reads all the right books, but he doesn't see the need to do what's written in them. He doesn't see the need to obey his Messiah, King, and intercessor in the day of judgment. Could it be that Joseph's son is overprivileged? Could it be that Joseph's son Ephraim feels he's special? Okay, but whether we think we're privileged or not, whether we think we're special or not, what would we rather hear when we go stand before the throne? On the one hand, would we like to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. You listened for my voice, did what I told you to do, and you also did your best to do everything that I and my son ever said in the Tanakh and the Brit Hadashah. And you got involved, you supported my son's kingdom work faithfully, you did what you could. You treated him as if he was actually your king, and you actually loved him and believed in his cause. You tried to help enter into the joy of your master. You tried to help. You did what you could. You applied yourself. Or, on the other hand, we perhaps hear, excuse me, but if you read all my books, then why didn't you do what I and my son said to do? In Ephraim, do we have anyone who perhaps knows what to do, but somehow never seems to comply with the organizational or kingdom aspects? It's the good news of the kingdom, but we're not interested to hear anything about the requirements to establish a true kingdom because we don't have that much commitment, because there's nothing in it for us that we want. We don't like to get into difficult words, but the reality facing us is we're hoping to get the death rate down to 90% over the next 30 to 40, maybe 50 years. Do you hear it? Do you hear me? Okay. And how do we get the death rate down to 90%? What we're going to do is we're going to encourage people to do exactly what one like Moses said to do. And we're going to encourage people to walk as one like Moses walked. Because Yeshua's example shows us how we are supposed to be walking out the whole Torah. And if we don't understand the difference, and we don't want to do the difference, then we really can't help you. As much as we would love to, we really can't help you. Okay, because our calling, what it says right there, we need to imitate him in everything. And we need to walk, meaning worship, exactly like he walked, meaning exactly like he worshiped, meaning keeping the full Torah. Okay, for Judah, that's Taryag mitzvot, 613. Just whatever the number is, we don't buy into the numbering system, but everything Elohim said, the whole bit. Elohim's concerns become our concerns. What Elohim wants becomes what we want. What his words are, that's what we try to do. The best is what we can. Okay? And it's not enough just to adore him. In the Midian, we're adoring him. Are we obeying him? Okay, for Ephraim, we're out there in the wilderness now. We're adoring him. Are we obeying him? Do we want to come home? Or do we not want to come home? Do we not want to form the stick of Joseph so we can come home? Yeah. I mean, what part of worship and walk like Yeshua worship and walk do we not get? What part of apply his teachings to ourselves and discipline ourselves to do them do we not want to get? You don't think we need to. We're special. We're Ephraim. We're special. Yeah. Well, people might wonder what Yeshua would have to say about this if he were here. And maybe if people would apply the words of the renewed covenant to themselves instead of just reading them. Maybe if we could all lower ourselves in our own eyes and elevate his words in our eyes so we might obey what we're reading. Okay, so Matthew, Yahoo 6 and 7. Again, there's just always so much to say here. But again, I have to slash my preparation time to make more time for the documentaries. So we're just going to give it to you live and unplugged or raw and uncut or whatever, because that's what time we have. So if you want to complain in the comments section, my assistant's instructions are just to delete. She's a very hardworking sister. She doesn't need aggravation. We're looking for real disciples. If you're a real disciple or you want to know more, please write us respectfully and in love. We'll be glad to talk. If you're Judah, want to know how Joseph can, the Genesis 35 and verse 11 alliance works, we're working on that. In documentaries, anyway, moving forward, Matthew chapter 6 and 7, there's so much here. Yeshua told us not to use vain repetitions. He says, and when you pray, do not use vain repetitions as the heathen do. Brother Judah, he's talking about you here. Okay, I know you don't like that. Okay, now he said, and the reason he says is, for he thinks that they will be heard for their many words. And this is what's he talking about here? He's talking about the Siddur. He's talking about the Birchat Haminim. Okay, you're asking Elohim to kill Joseph 18 times a week. So like more than 2.2 million practicing Orthodox Jews right now, something. So like 18, how many curses was it this last week? Like 38, 36, 38, 40 million curses. So Genesis 12 and verse 3 says not to curse other Israelites or it's going to come back on you. But you think if you just keep hammering Elohim, just pray it enough times, then that's really going to stand you in good stead. Just because you're going to do something he didn't say to do something he said not to do enough times, you're going to win over Elohim, right? Is that the thought process? Okay, so you're rather than praying by heart, you're praying by imitation, right? Okay, so I know imitate a proper example, but if you imitate an improper example, don't you end up with an improper imitation? Okay, all the respect, but what are we doing here? Why are you cursing Joseph every week? Okay, so Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 9, we see the disciples' prayer. We're not going to go through it here, but that is a radical prayer for the house of Ephraim. If we will actually live by that, it will bring the kingdom of heaven down to earth. But we have to do it, and not just read it, and not just talk about it over lunch on Shabbat. Okay? So, I mean, there's actually something to this. We're praying for any real Hebrew prayer. Anytime someone really prays a Hebrew prayer, we're praying to be conformed to his will. That's what we're really praying here. So we may say the prayer, we want to be conformed to his will, but then we're not willing to conform ourselves to his will, except for the parts that are easy and free. brothers, what are we doing here? What is our purpose here? What are we called to do for him? Okay. Aren't we called to reestablish our original purpose in Genesis 2 and verse 15? Okay, we're called, this is a step we'll show in future studies. This is a step we are attempting to reestablish what Elohim always wanted. It's a multi-step process. The step in the process that we are at right now, Judah and Joseph need to realize what's going on in Genesis 35 and verse 11, and then figure out, realize the Talmud is wrong, the Tanakh is right, Joseph lives. So now where do we go from here? Now, a word for Ephraim. Does Ephraim think it's going to be easy? In fact, a better question, does Ephraim think it should be easy? Because Ephraim seems to think it should be easy and cheap. Okay, now, why does Ephraim think it should be easy and cheap? Okay, does that mean Ephraim loves Elohim so much that he wants to make free sacrifices for Elohim? He wants to distinguish himself from the rest of the crowd by doing things that are easy and free. Is that right? Okay, well, good thing is not my job to worry about people's emotions and feelings, because my job is not to tickle ears here. So some people want a mystery Babylonian Greco-Roman church amphitheater model system. We don't do that here. Okay, there's people, they're like, well, we should be able to come in and experience everything for an unlimited amount of time, as much as we want before we make a commitment. We've tried that in the past. That does not work. Not in this environment. Because why? Because people are not taking their responsibilities before Elohim seriously. And why? Because they're scared. Like, raise your hand if you're scared that Elohim is going to let you outgive him. Raise your hand. Be honest with yourself, or just admit to yourself. Are you afraid that you're going to give to Yahweh and he's not going to take care of you? Are you afraid that you're going to make a commitment to Yahweh and he's not going to give you something much more valuable than what you gave up? It's like, are you afraid Yahweh's going to rip you off? Or are you afraid that Yeshua's program is not worth it? Not if there's a real cost. Or are you afraid Yeshua's program is not a good deal? When he himself commands that these are the things that we need to do, it's like, that's not, no, we don't want to do that. It's the attitudes in Ephraim are amazing. Like, are you afraid that Yahweh is going to forget to save you if you take an action of love for him and dedicate yourself for him and building his son's kingdom the way we're all supposed to be doing? Are you afraid that you're going to lay down your life and make an act of solemn dedication and devotion and love, and it's going to be a net loss? That Elohim is a bad investment? Okay, like that's not something to be invested in. Is Yeshua, is the renewed covenant, is the Great Commission? Or is it the question one of perspective, or what do we have going on? Just some stories. I've met a lot of Ephraimites through the years, and I've learned and grown myself. But so he's a doctor. He picks me up at the airport. It's like brand new Escalade, takes me back. He's got like a 4,000 square foot brick house with a huge swimming. I don't know if it was Olympic size, but a huge swimming pool. Yeah. And him and the whole camp was like that. People with airplanes, people with all kinds of possessions, no money for Elohim. And more than that, the reason there's no money is because there's no commitment to Elohim. They don't want what Elohim has to offer. They don't want Yeshua's plan. They want a church where they can play church. They want a Sabbath and feast church where they come in and they can adore Yeshua, but they don't have to learn to become like Yeshua. Well, just stories. Another sister picks me up from the airport it's a Mercedes, so they take it back. They've just finished expanding their house and They've purchased another piece of property outside of town, and then they're building their dream home, retirement house. And she's like, how can you afford to tithe? It's like, by putting Elohim first. And not everyone's rich like that, but it just kind of seems like whoever they are, they have time and money for vacations, for airplanes, for hobbies, for fancy machines. And what they want is they want someone to lie to them and tell them that it's just all knowledge. It's all you need to do. You need to learn. Of course, if you think it's just about learning, then you're going to read your Bible yourself. That's it. You're done. No matter that parts of the Bible are open and parts of the Bible are closed. But but the big question is, but where are our priorities? Okay, the people who are leaving comments, the people who are nasty. Okay, Brother Judah, again, we get it. You think we're pagans. You think Joseph is dead. You think the Tanakh is evil and no one should read it. And if we read the Tanakh, then that's just really the worst thing in the world because it's only for Judah. And it's just like, okay, we'll deal with that later. Okay, but for Ephraim, okay, where are our priorities, brothers? We say that we're saved by grace and that not of our own doing. What do we do? Do we live like that? Or do we, I mean, other met couples, like they're not putting Yahweh first. And for some reason, the marriage just isn't working out. Neither one of them wants to put Elohim first. Neither one of them wants to put Yeshua first. For some reason, their relationships just are never really blessed. Oh, okay. But they don't want to put Tanakh first. They don't want to put Brit Hadashah first. Oh, okay. So Matthew 6 and verse 22, we're talking about the evil eye. What does it mean? Okay, well, there's all sorts of, Judah's got the Hamsa hand and all this kind of stuff. That's not what it means. Okay, in Yeshua, at least in the context Yeshua is using here, to have an evil eye means to be stingy. And he's talking about money in this whole. It's really amazing when you realize what's going on. Yeshua's talking. He talks about money more than he talks about love. Yeah, and why does he do that? Because clearly he's all about love. But why? So why does he talk about money more than he talks about love? It's because that he knows where the people's hearts are. Martin Luther. We have a difficult love-hate relationship with Martin Luther. He said some terrible things he never should have said. But he was the one used to bring us back to focus on the Tanakh. So, he said a man's wallet is the last part of him to be converted. So basically, and I've heard it put by a Messianic sister, if you're not willing to be faithful with Yahweh's money, then you're not faithful in much. It's an incomplete conversion. So are we signing up for Yeshua's program, or are we looking for excuses to get out of keeping Yeshua's program? This is what he's talking about, the whole passage. If your eye is evil, how great is that darkness? He's talking about the same thing. Verse 24, no one can serve two masters. Okay? You're not going to serve Elohim, and you're not going to serve money or the temporal realm or pleasures. You're not going to serve the spirit and the flesh at the same time. You have to pick one or the other. You have to pick a pony and ride. That's all there is. And so what's the solution? Verse 33, Yeshua tells us, it's like, there's another one. Another one of the things, if you get nothing else from this video, I know I've said that more than once, seek first the kingdom. It's the good news of the kingdom. That's why it says we have to seek first the kingdom, not just sending texts and emails on Facebook, not just reading a bunch of stuff, not reading a bunch of websites and doing nothing else. Don't get me wrong, knowledge is great. But seek first to build Yeshua's kingdom. That's why his Father sent him. Seek first to do our part to build the fraternal kingdom of Elohim and his righteousness. And then everything else is going to be added to us on a right foundation and in right order. So we don't have to worry about tomorrow. We don't have to worry about our dream home coming up. We don't have to worry about the next airplane we want to buy. We don't have to. take vacations and things, and then we don't have vacation time for Sukkot. Okay. Don't worry about getting your life in order with Elohim later. Get your life in order with Elohim right now. Why? Is because sufficient for each day is its own trouble. So just to comment briefly on Matthew 7 and verse 4, what shall we say? Judah, the house of Judah, needs to remove the Talmud from his own eye before he goes to judge Joseph by the Tanakh. Okay, you got to get Talmud and Tanakh are not compatible. You have to choose one or the other. Either you're going to worship Elohim or you're going to worship yourselves. Please choose Elohim. For Ephraim's part, Ephraim needs to remove the disobedience and the rebellion from his own eyes first. And then he needs to start doing everything Scripture says to do. Okay. Then he's qualified to write comments in criticism. Okay. We are not above reproach, but we require that we be held to the standards of Scripture and not people's opinions. No Scripture is of any private interpretation. Okay, once we start doing everything from cover to cover to the best of our ability, then we can start to say that we're keeping Torah. How many Ephraimites have I heard say, we're keeping Torah, we're keeping Torah? You're not keeping Torah. He's right, you're keeping Torah light. Okay, verse 7. One of the most important things in all of Scripture is hearing in the Spirit. That's the difference. That's what makes a prophet a prophet. Okay, how do you do it? It's a gift. You have to ask for it. And what do? You have to ask and seek and knock until you get it. And if it doesn't come easily and it doesn't come free, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if Elohim wants you to do everything in his word before he's going to give you the gift of the Spirit. Sometimes it works like that. Sometimes he gives you the gift of the Spirit, and then you have to learn what he wants. And other times he wants to see some kind of obedience before he's going to cast pearls. Okay, it's all about submission, brothers. It's all about putting him first. And you know the thing about putting him first, the Nike slogan, just do it. Not to give props to Nike, but what are you going to do? You're going to do something other than what Elohim says to do, or you're going to just do what Elohim says to do? Just do what Elohim says to do. You have to know, brother. You got to know. Okay, this whole thing, all this script, this whole thing, it's a giant weed out test. It's a giant bozo filter to see who truly is going to put him first out of love and obedience, even when it's not easy or free, even when it's hard, even when it takes effort. Oh, you have to work toward it. Doesn't that help set apart who truly loves him and wants to see his word done versus who's just here for the reward? Okay, it's the little red hen weed out. Okay, and most Ephraimites, they don't even think they need to be trying. Okay, brothers, wake up. We're trying to get the death rate down from over 99% down to 90. Please be one of the 10% that choose life. Okay, verse 12, whatever you want me to do to you, treat other people the same way. Whatever you want Elohim to do to you, whatever we want Elohim to do to us, we should treat other people the same way. Okay, the pagans turn this into karma. They turn this into what goes around comes around. And it's the same general idea, and it's true. In physics, for each and every action, there's an equal but opposite reaction. And if we're not willing to live by this verse, then the rest of the commandment keeping is worthless. It's pointless. Brothers, Judah, if you're cursing Joseph, or I've met Ephraimites, I've met plenty of Ephraimites who hate Judah. Okay, if you're cursing or hating Joseph, or you're cursing or hating Judah, what do you know from Elohim? Now, with regard to the Abraham Accords, we're trying to reestablish that single family of man that takes care of the planet, by taking care of each other and listens to him. Yeah, that's spoiler alert. That's what we're trying to work toward. And it's hard. Why? Because it shows who truly loves him and is willing to make difficult sacrifices for him, and who doesn't really love him and is looking for a broad, easy road. Matthew 7 and verse 13, enter by the narrow gate. This is where 99% of Ephraim fails. Because why? Because they're looking for a broad, easy gate. They're looking for a broad, easy road that leads to life. It doesn't exist. Ephraim, stop looking for a broad, easy road that leads to life. It does not exist. It should not exist. There should never be a time when we should be looking for a broad, easy road that leads to salvation. And sadly, there's plenty of them out there preaching the false word. Verse 15, beware of false prophets who do not teach the need to do 100% of everything cover to cover. Because if they're teaching you that you do not need to do all, if they're not helping you to do all, then they are effectively replacing the Torah. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay, now, what's the difference in real terms? What's the difference between the Messianic movement, which teaches you don't need to keep the whole Torah, and Esav? What's the difference? Do we need to obey all of our master's words or not all of our master's words? It's the end times, brothers. Now let's zoom in a little here on verse 16. It says, you will know them by their fruits. What? Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes? Oh, or you gather figs from thistles? No. Okay, even if that were the case, every good tree is going to bear good fruit. Okay, but a bad tree is going to bear bad fruit. So you're going to see bad fruit. It's time to get away from the tree. Not right away. First, you got to resolve issues. Okay, verse 18, if you're going to be a real body to him. Verse 18, a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Okay, every tree that does not bear Torah fruit, the whole of the written Torah, the whole of the Tanakh, the whole of the Brit Hadashah will be cut down and thrown into the fire. Verse 20, therefore, by their fruits you will know them. Now, we're not allowed to judge. It's not for us to know what's in any man's heart. But we are told very clearly right here to inspect the fruit. Okay, so Matthew 7, verse 21. Not everyone who says to Yeshua, Adon, Adon, or Lord, Lord, in the Christian's case, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven. Why? Only the one who's going to do the will of his Father in heaven is the one who gets to go in. And how will he know him? By their fruits, brethren. How are our fruits? Do we have fruits of a heart to obey everything in Scripture, cover to cover? Just for a little mental clarity. Verse 22, Yeshua is telling us right here up front. This is his very first sermon, the Beatitudes. He's helping us to understand the relationship, the understanding that we're supposed to have. Just like the 10 Commandments are given, people are saying, who needs it? We don't have to obey those closely. Verse 22, many will say to me in that day, Adon, Adon, look at all the good stuff we did for you. Have we not prophesied in your name? Have we not cast out demons in your name? A lot of Christians, a lot of Messianics I can think of here. Have we not done many wonders in your name? And verse 23, he says, and then I will declare to those who walk the broader, easier pathway, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice Torahlessness. Okay? Anomia, without Torah. They're not following the marital covenant. What else is there to say? Let's take a step back and take a look at this thing. So, Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 through 23, very first sermon, Yeshua is trying to get the relationships correct. What's he telling us? We're there, we're in the crowd, we're listening. What's he telling us? He's telling us, starting in Matthew 5, verse 17, 18, 19, 20, he's saying, do not think that the least smallest thing from the Torah is going to fall. Okay, now fast forward here to near the end of the same first sermon. And what are we talking about? We're talking about today, we're talking about people who rest and read and eat lunch over at their friend's house. And they say, I'm keeping Torah. They rest on Sabbath and feasts, and they might read their Bible and talk about it once in a while. They might they might shoot some emails or some links on YouTube. Hey, watch this one. Okay, and they say they're keeping the Torah. And what the reality is they think they found a broad, easy road. They don't have to do everything that's written cover to cover. That's what's really going on with 99+% of Ephraim right now. Verse 24, build on the rock. It means take it serious. Yeshua's not playing games here. Don't play games with your eternal salvation. Don't play games with your soul. Starting back in Matthew 5 and verse 17, Yeshua told us he wants us to do everything the Torah says to do. Exactly the way it was given in the written Torah of Moshe, the written bridal covenant that Elohim gave to Israel through Moshe. And he wants everything done according to the pattern that he showed us on the mountain, because that's what will build his kingdom, or would. We'll talk about that in more detail in the Abraham Accord series. But we have to come back to his words. We have to come to Elohim's words. So Ephraim, buddy, brother, don't think you can blow off your king's words. Don't think you can ignore your king's words and nothing bad's going to happen. And don't think the kingdom's going to get built either. Don't think, and even if you manage to build a kingdom, brother Judah, if you manage to build it, how are you going to get a blessing on it if it's not done according to his instructions? If we're not going to do things according to the manner that was shown to us on the mountain, then what do we expect a blessing for? So for Ephraim, okay, he gives us our mina, meaning our saved lives. What are we going to do with it? He's got recorders. They're watching what we do and writing things down in books. Maybe your zillionaire philanthropist grandma, grandpa gave you $100 just to see what you do with it. Okay, well, what are you going to do? You're going to put it towards some wise use that's going to help build a better world, a single family of man that listens for Elohim's voice so they can live together in peace and harmony and maintain his planet the way he wants. We're going to do that. We'll show you the long-term goal. But what are we going to do? We're going to do something with it that builds him the kind of world he wants? Well, if we are, then maybe unbeknownst to us, they're going to drop 10 trillion on us in the inheritance because they know they suspect that we're going to spend it for Elohim and for the kind of world that Elohim wants instead of blowing it on ourselves. Okay, so what are we doing with our mina? What are we doing with our day timer? You take a look at people's pocketbook and you take a look at their calendar and you know where they spend their time and where they spend their money. And you know a lot about them when you know where they spend their time and where they spend their money. And I've had people tell me, why don't you just seek to have as much pleasure as you can have? It's like, why don't you just seek to do as much for Elohim as you can? Why don't you just seek to do as much for Yeshua as you can? It's difficult being in my role, understanding that I'm called to help present every man approved. I'm not the greatest communicator to start with, but that Ephraim doesn't want it, and that after 30 or 40 or maybe 50 years of preaching, we're going to get the death rate down to 90%. And you want to motivate people, you want to encourage people, but you need people to understand that they're playing with fire here. They're playing with strange fire when they're not obeying Elohim and doing everything exactly what he says. So whether you're Orthodox Judah, and that would be the Tanakh. And we're confident that if you begin in the Tanakh, you will also end up in the Brit Hadashah, because that's what Daniel 9, verse 25 through 26 says. But if you're Ephraim and you think you're special and you don't think you need to, that's only for Judah. Brothers, I love you. We're commanded to seek first the kingdom of Elohim and his righteousness. That's a command. That's an order. That's marching orders. Okay, and then everything we need will be added to us. And not in the game way where everyone's like, oh, everything I have belongs to Elohim, but not really. I mean, what are we doing? By what fruits does Yeshua know that we're working for him? We're putting him first. Or we hate to think it, Yeshayahu, Isaiah 28 and verse 1 speaks about the drunkards of Ephraim drinking some strange spirits. And verse 3 says the drunkards of Ephraim will be trampled underfoot. Because why? Because they didn't want to make a commitment to their Elohim. Because why? Because they're lukewarm. They bore lukewarm fruit. Yeshua committed to them, but did they want to commit back to Yeshua? Or is it all a one-way street? And if it's a one-way street, does it make us one of the 5 wise virgins? Or does it make us one of the 5 foolish ones who won't be able to find oil for her lamp because she waited too long? We're talking about the sloshers of Ephraim who are on their lips because they drink bad spirits while they're studying. They read scripture to prove how great they are rather than to read scripture to see where they need to improve. They don't show, maybe that's why they don't show fruits of true repentance, fruits worthy of repentance, like keeping all of scripture that you're able to do. People they leave, they unsubscribe because we don't speak smooth things. They speak to us smooth things, they say. But the problem is we're not commanded to speak smooth things. We're commanded to speak the truth in love. And to say it again, our goal here over the next 30 or 50 years is to get the Isaiah 10 and verse 22 death rate down to 90%. Okay, now, does that tell you how high the standards are? It's going to take 30 or 40 or 50 years to bring the survival rate up to a tithe, to a 10%. So, people claim to love Yeshua, and then you look and see how hard their hearts are toward the Great Commission to establish the true Great Commission globally and worldwide. And then people are, well, it's not going to make any difference whether we didn't do it. We didn't obey scripture. It's like, this is Ephraim. It's written right there in the word what we're supposed to do. We talk about it all the time. The Great Commission, single foundation of apostles and prophets, 5-fold ministry protocol. Oh, that's too hard. Ephraim doesn't, it's too hard. Give us an alternative. Give us something that we can just, flip back and forth. We can attend what we want, no commitment, an easy marriage covenant. I don't know how to say it. You're welcome to watch videos. You're not welcome to hassle my assistant and the contact staff. We're overworked. We're overloaded. Ephraim has no appreciation whatsoever for what's being done on his behalf. Most of Ephraim. I know maybe a dozen people that I would vouch for. So that is to say, I know maybe a dozen people, it seems like they're trying to do what Elohim truly says to do. They're trying to do everything that's written in the word. And I don't know how many thousands that they just think it doesn't seem to apply to them. They just don't need to do that. And yet they think they're building on the rock. Okay, now what visible fruits do we see of a repentant spirit? Okay, do we see someone spending time, making a point, listening diligently for his voice and seeking to obey it as best as he can? Okay, do we see visible fruits? Do we see that testify that we're trying to obey everything that we can of the written Torah and of the Tanakh and of the Brit Hadashah that we can at this time? There's a whole lot of Ephraim that he's certain that he will be chosen. He's called, and he's certain he's going to be chosen because he's been called. And he's not doing the minimums. We're not even talking special mention. We're talking people that want to give us direction. They want to be our Holy Spirit, and they're not even doing what Scripture says. So, I don't know, brothers. I would say ordinarily a word to the wise is sufficient. I don't know why we have so many in Ephraim, foolish doves, Hosea calls us. Foolish doves, lacking heart or lacking sense in some versions. And I love you with all my heart. I love you enough to ask you before Elohim, with heaven and earth as witnesses, if you call on Yeshua's name, are you doing all you can for him? Or are you not? Are you looking for ways to help build and further his kingdom? Or are you looking for ways to get out of helping to build and further his kingdom? Yeah, as we go through this Torah, Midrash, hybrid, apostolic, prophetical, and evangelical series for the Genesis 35 Alliance, we're going to see again and again and again now Elohim commands his people Israel to organize. Because why? Because that's how you win. Okay, so that's why we saw last week that he called us out of Egypt or Mitzrayim by our armies. And that's why Yeshua commanded the people to sit down in groups of 50s, is because organized action is vastly superior to disorganized action. And not only on the battlefield, okay, but on the battlefield, which is more effective on the battlefield? A trained army that acts with discipline or a rabble? Well, so the training and the coordination, don't those make a big difference on the battlefield? Okay, not just on the battlefield. They also make all the difference on the spiritual battlefield. Why? Is because, as we'll see, Elohim commands it. And just for Ephraim, the reason Ishmael already has a state. He has many states. Why? Because he organizes. Okay, are we organizing as he commands in Genesis 35 and verse 11 so that we can win the spiritual war? And if you're Jewish and you don't believe in Yeshua, so that we can obey the Tanakh, or that's out because of the Talmud. Okay, and for Ephraim, we're not throwing the Tanakh out because of the Talmud. But what are we doing, brothers? What are we doing to establish the kingdom that Yeshua told us his Father wants him to establish in his absence? Bride is described as a helper. Are we helping him, or are we focused on something else? Have we made a genuine commitment to helping our husband, to being his helper? Or do we have other priorities than that, but we expect to be taken as his bride nonetheless? Brothers, how does Elohim know of our love, our devotion, or our commitment if we behave like the lost tennis tribes, for whom love means nothing? Okay, if we love him, we need to keep his commandments. We need to organize. We need to do the things he says to do. We need to make a commitment to the one who gave his life to bring Joseph home. And if we're not willing to do that, aren't we just wasting time? Brothers, I ask you, please, to search your hearts and ask yourself, do I want a church service on Sabbath like Asaph has in his house? Or do I want the real Second Temple period synagogue style service? We'll give you the best as what we can. Which one do I want? Where is my heart and why? Do I want what Yeshua wants? Take 7 minutes. Ask yourself, do I want what Yeshua wants? If you're Orthodox, ask yourself, is what I want what Elohim wants? Or is it something else? Shabbat Shalom.